I'm Amanda Zimmerman, and I'm here today with Dominic Stokes. We're all about talking about lean, but we call it squishy lean because we don't necessarily conform to kind of maybe all the different directions or the different ways that we can squeeze lean into a box. We tend to kind of think outside of that. Process improvement, continuous improvement. So today we want to chat more about the virtual resume, or all of these different ingredients that go into our CVs and our resumes. And I think this is particularly interesting because for me, I think my mind goes maybe in different places than Dominic. And I'm excited to hear kind of what he's prepared today. I know he's been thinking a lot about this, and I'm keen to understand more of how he sees it. And really for us to talk about where is this going in the long term, right? Because today is fine, but in the next 5-10 years, the way we see our CVs and resumes is definitely going to change. There's so much tech going into it, so much AI, and how that affects our ability to get that job or get that interview. Yeah. So Dominic, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of your vision? I know you've been really excited to talk about this topic.
I have been really excited about this. Sometimes I have feelings where I know that I can do a job very well, or I know that I've practiced and I've learned the technical skill. But there are times where I feel that what I'm able to write down on a resume doesn't fully explain who I am. And for the people that really know me, they may know that I have other aspects that I can bring to the table. Maybe like how I can influence a culture, or how my optimism helps in times of stress, or something like that. And I think that those points need to be weighed evenly, or at least equitably, against some of the other dollar figure metrics or other traditional things that you see on a resume. So I think, and this was something that you said to me a while ago, Amanda, with the ability for a lot of people now to showcase themselves online through any type of social media, through creating professional YouTube channels or different Facebook accounts and stuff like that, or even on LinkedIn, I think that you have a really good opportunity to showcase who you are. And I think that some of our discussions today can kind of go into that. So the gist of my point is, I think that there's more of the soft skills that we can show in a way that measures up well with the traditional numerical metrics that you usually put on a resume. But I think it could be graphical, and maybe have a little bit of color, a little splash of color in there.
Okay. Color is fun. You know, some of us aren't used to that in our CVs and our resumes. I have a question though, before we kind of jump into the meat of the CV or the resume. As we came together today, one of the things that I thought a lot about was what employers actually want, right? So what are they trying to, what information are they trying to garnish from this paper that we hand them or that they get sent ahead of time? And one of the things I think that gets to your point that I think is a huge struggle is oftentimes they don't know what they want in terms of soft skills. They know what green belt is, and they know if you've been certified, then that's good. If you've got it from ASQ, cool. But they don't necessarily know why those soft skills are important. How do you see that, or what do you think employers want that off of these CVs and resumes?
A lot of times I hear that employers want coachable people, people with good attitudes, resilient people. But you do have to understand some of the technical aspects. So I think that some of it depends on how you showcase how well-rounded you are. But I think more of it also depends on how prepared that company is to fill in the gap or to train you on some of the other things. So if I'm a very coachable person, but I might not have all of the technical skills, I might want to ask an employer, how well is your training program? How I don't know, demarcated is your onboarding process? Do you have mentors and different people that I can talk to if I'm having issues? Do you have a digital library where I can learn things on my own, or other people that I can shadow? I think some of that goes into it too. So I think that employers are looking for people that will be a good team player, but somebody that can also either bring in technical expertise or learn technical expertise and contribute to growth. All companies seem like they're trying to grow.
I think that team player piece is is really interesting, because what I've seen as well when we get into these interviews, or when you kind of delve deeper into what they're looking for, each
Mhm.
business has taken on, and this is why we call it squishy, right? Because it's not the same everywhere. Each business has taken on continuous improvement, but in a slightly different way. I've never seen necessarily like multiple businesses approaching it in the same exact way. There's always these nuances. And
Mhm.
in the same way, there's these nuances with the way they see you as a team player, how you fit into the organization. So some see you as very technical in terms of you're going to bring the expertise of doing time and motion studies and doing these very
Mhm.
strict activities. And then others see you as you have a seat at the leadership table, you have a seat at the executive table, and you need to help drive continuous improvement across the organization. And they can be very difficult to understand until you get into the interview, until you see kind of those details. So I don't know what you've experienced in that space. If you've kind of seen that once you get in, listening to the employer and hearing more about the way they see you as a team player can kind of also shape the stories that you tell, or whether or not it's the right fit for you.
That's true. And I think the place where the rubber meets the road in that example that you brought up is how well of a grip did the team that interviews you, how well of a grip did they have on what the real problem is? That's what we look
Mm,
for. Like whenever
yeah,
somebody asks us to, they tell us a symptom or something that they're dealing with, like
yeah.
we have this huge issue. The first thing we're really trying to do is define the problem.
And
So
the interview goes both ways,
sometimes
right?
it's a
You're
little bit
interviewing
of
them as well.
re-explaining.
Yeah.
It should. I don't know. Sometimes you're in a position where you're looking for something else in a rush or like in a quick
Mm-hmm.
situation. I hope it
Mm-hmm.
goes both ways. I hope that everybody is fortunate enough to be able to interview like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you're also seeing if this is the right fit for you. So, in that whole
Yeah,
idea of what the problem is, if you don't understand that, then you might be setting yourself up for maybe something that's not quite the right fit.
correct. Yes. So
Cool. So,
that is
how,
why I think it's even more important to
yeah,
craft this resume, or at least to try to showcase other skills.
yeah, awesome. So, what do you see then as like the virtual resume? Because I know you've talked about this. So do you already have kind of in your mind what that looks like, or what are some of those elements that you see in that virtual resume?
Before I start bashing the traditional resume, I want to say some of the good
Okay.
things that exist because
Yeah.
this isn't like a if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. Like I want to say what I like about resumes, and then I'll go
Okay.
into some of the other things. So what I really like is that it forces you to be like deliberate and succinct about experience and about the what. I
Mm-hmm.
improved this department by this much of a percentage in this amount of a time span. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it incentivizes metrics that are easy to compare. So if you've worked at a company that had this many employees and you implemented these types of savings, these cost savings in your projects, you can look at that and kind of gauge that against other people that are applying for the job to see if they can
Mm-hmm.
handle like the size of the improvements that you want to make. And it condenses a lot of experience into a timeline, just the way that it's organized. You can read down
Mm-hmm.
and see what's their most recent experience. What have they done in the past? How long ago was that? Have things
Mm-hmm.
changed in the industry since they've done something like that? So those are the good things. But I don't, while it explains the what very well, I don't think that it explains the how. So if I say
Mm-hmm.
something like, I implemented Kanban in my previous organization, does that mean that you like made the cards or did you just buy the bins?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have
Yeah.
to explain to people that didn't really understand what Kanban was, like what it was? What kind of
Mm-hmm.
issues did you face when trying to roll that out? So it doesn't really showcase the how. It also doesn't showcase the breadth in a way that connects with life outside of work. So maybe you were able to be
It
successful in one of your
depends.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Fight back on those, please. This is just my idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that if there's something that I understand very well outside of work,
Mm-hmm.
and I can use that as a way to kind of explain it to people inside of work, that means that
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about those concepts and really digesting them. And then you have somebody that can teach that better. So if I can relate a lean concept to a sports concept, maybe
Mm-hmm.
that gets somebody else on board sooner. But what was your
Mm-hmm.
rebuttal to that about the
Well,
explaining the breadth?
so I got my master's at Imperial College of London, and one of the services
Mhm.
that they offered as part of the master's was updating or creating a new resume or
Mhm.
CV, depending how you want to format things. Um, and what I was most surprised about is I had been going down the path of creating, I guess, more creative CVs, and their template
Mhm.
was very, very basic, like name, phone number, objectives, and then you just go into it. But one
Mhm.
of the things that's at the bottom of most templates are kind of like, we have like certifications, you have maybe education, but you can also have a spot for, I can't remember if I called it hobbies or interests, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes it's already on their interests. And so
Mhm.
I've always used that space to highlight some of the things I've done that I think also correspond to soft skills that they're looking for. So, for
Yeah.
example, I led a yoga group when I was in Angola. So for two
Mhm.
years, or however long it was, I led a yoga group there that met weekly. So that's something that shows, I'm kind of going over and above. I'm getting a team together. I'm leading this group. Another thing that I highlighted was that I was a runner-up in the London Zoo photo contest. Um,
Really?
that I traveled to, 50 countries. And in one of my interviews, I saw that the person interviewing me had a compass tattoo. So when his shirt moved, I saw this tattoo and I thought, I'm good. Right?
Yeah.
Like you could
We can talk
see
about
that
that.
the interests that I put in at the bottom of the CV were something people were actually looking at and
Mhm.
connected people to me in a way that was different than I saved X amount of dollars or I led whatever project. So I think there is space for it in our
Mhm.
CVs, but I will say that it's not traditional. People are not
Mhm.
comfortable with it quite often. Like personally, people feel uncomfortable putting those types of details down. And I
Okay.
think employers, I don't know that employers would directly say, I want this, but it tends to influence because now that I have the YouTube channel on Facebook, I have links there to videos as well. And
Mhm.
I'm surprised that people click on links randomly, but it's like everyone I've interviewed with said, "Oh, I watched your video." Or I saw that, that you had that link and I clicked on that link. And so
Mhm.
that to me is really surprising that even just having that interest section, people are interacting with that so heavily. And so I'm interested as we talk today about the virtual resume because what we're doing is we're bringing our personality and who we are, which sometimes maybe gets these three lines. We're trying to make it a more well-rounded view of who they're getting, right?
Yes.
Making us stand out as well.
Yeah. In a way that can also be continued even after that resume is completed. So it's like
Yes.
it's a non-time stamping aspect. That link is going to
Yeah.
continuously be updated.
Yeah.
If that goes to like a landing page or something like that. So that is
Mm-hmm.
actually a really good point. The interests aspect of the resume has a larger dimension because of the internet and because of videos and ways that you can
Yeah.
showcase yourself. That is a really good point. What else did I have on here? The only other thing that I had on here was, and this can also be debunked by your interests part. Sometimes it doesn't leave a lot of space to explain what you bring to a culture. You see
Yeah.
a lot of people talking about culture on LinkedIn, talking
Mm-hmm.
about it in your companies. Sometimes there's even positions for people that like are focused on maintaining the culture or like
Mm-hmm.
setting a new track to the culture. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that understanding people's backgrounds and personalities can kind of lead into that.
Yeah.
And there might be a better way for you to showcase how you've been a team player in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
So for the how part, I tried to think over the past couple weeks about how could I explain to myself my role and like how I fit into
Mm-hmm.
teams and like what
Mm-hmm.
exists now. I'm not trying to recreate the wheel. I just want to see, is there something else that's out there that does this thing really well? So I started to look into personality tests. like the
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs or Enneagrams or something like that. And there's a
Or the
whole list of
colors,
yeah,
e-colors. Yeah.
a whole list of personality tests. I think that sometimes finding the right description of a personality test, it really explains the how very well because it
Mm-hmm.
explains like if this is how your mind works, or if you can give some sort of analogy based off of this, I don't know, compartmentalization of like how
Mm-hmm.
you think and how you act, how you listen, how you respond. Somebody may say, I need somebody with this technical skill plus this extroverted personality to be in this role.
Mm-hmm.
And then that
Mm-hmm.
rounds you out a little bit more. Or they might want somebody that's introverted. It might be less of a high paced environment. And maybe an extroverted person might not fit well within that. Or maybe that's what they need. I don't know. But I think
I
that
think,
that might be a good
yeah.
thing for us to kind of chat about a little bit.
That's an interesting one because when I worked with Chevron, they did e-colors and they
Hmm.
encouraged everybody to do e-colors. And what it was is 4 colors, so red, green, yellow, and blue.
Hmm.
And then in your email signature, you would go ahead and put like your red over green or
Okay.
blue over green. Okay. And so red is like you're powerful, you're like in charge, you're like a leader type personality, right? So you're like alpha, kind of. And then I think blue is more analytical, green. I can't remember the difference between blue and green, but blue I think was more analytical and green was maybe more detail oriented. And then
Hmm.
yellow was like car salesman, friendly, talkative, chatty. And I was, for a long time, I was blue over green. And then I
Hmm.
think I was blue over red. But what was amazing about having those colors was if I got an email from somebody that was like red over yellow or yellow over red,
Hmm.
I instantly knew that I had to ask how their weekend was.
Yes. How to approach
I
it.
knew that I had to like approach them in a different way because
Yeah.
I wasn't comfortable with yellows, is what I found out. That I had to learn how to interact with yellows. So I think that's a really interesting idea to incorporate into a CV because if I today, even today, saw that that was referenced in any way, I would like instantly have an idea of how that person would fit into the team.
Yes. And it's so easy. I like the thing that I kind of want to key in on what you said was how simple it was to show in an email signature. This could
Mm-hmm.
be wrapped around your picture, just like the open to work things that are on people's pictures on LinkedIn, or like
Mm-hmm.
there's ways that you can border something that's already existing on your resume and look at all the
Yeah.
information that's there just in that graphic for something that was already going to be on there anyway. Like if you had a
Mm-hmm.
picture of yourself, or if that was like the underline underneath your name, if it was those colors or something like that. I just think that
Mm-hmm.
that shows a lot. And because I'm not saying that that's the only thing that goes on the resume, I don't want to scare anybody to think like now everybody's just going to judge me based on 4 letters or 2 colors. That's
Yeah.
just a piece of it. Like that should be in somebody's mind whenever they read a bullet point with a metric beside it, saying like, oh, if this person implemented this tool or this solution and they have this type of personality, they must have been the person, or at least you can explain that in the interview.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been the person that was in charge of setting it all up or selling
Mm-hmm.
it to people that may not have heard of it before. Something like that.
And so one of
Okay,
the
so I'm glad you
things,
brought that up. And I'm glad that you
yeah,
saw that.
one of the things that strikes me, as we're talking here, because a lot of what we're talking about is after we get the interview, right? But there's all these algorithms, all
Mhm.
these things, all this AI nowadays to get you past that, right? To get you to the point that you actually
That
get
first,
that
that
interview.
first door.
Yeah. So when we think about like the virtual CV or resume, because some people also they do websites, right? Some people have their own site that they
True.
have like their CVs at. A lot of creative people have that, like marketing or
Hmm.
entertainment. Um, but how do we get past the bot so that we can get to the interview, so that we can get the chance to showcase who we are? Because otherwise, it might not get past the recruiter.
That's true. And that's such a tough question. Something that somebody told me when I was in college, and I think this was really good advice, is, and again, this might be after you have like the first phone screen, because
Mm-hmm.
if you like have the opportunity to get that, writing a thank you note and then sending that, trying to do something that's personal
good.
that
Yeah.
just shows that you're able to put in that extra time. If there's anything that you can do like that digitally, or at least like reach out to somebody that works there already to kind of
Yeah.
like explain, that might at least get you past that first gate and into the interview. But that's tough because there's just an ocean of people that are applying to jobs. Or in other like articles that I've read, there might be even people trying to like fake apply to the jobs to test for, I don't know, how transparent they are or
Bias or
if there's
yeah.
any bias in the hiring. So now you're up against other competitors and bots just to get your resume read. So
Yeah.
I
And
don't know.
sometimes I'll have like I can't remember, I think CV is like the one pager, right? And resumes where you go into detail, but I'll usually have two. So I'll have something that's like everything in detail, kind of like what's on my LinkedIn. And then I'll have like the
Mm,
one pager that might be what I send or I come in with for the interview. And
mhm.
the longer version to me is where you get those keywords that you want to include that maybe gets past those bots. Is like I'm going to
Yeah.
put everything down. But the
Yes.
best thing to do is just what you said, is connect with people. Is if you can go to events where you can meet people, if you can reach out on LinkedIn, send people a
Mhm.
message. Like, I think people are so shy sometimes to be able to do that, but
Yeah.
nobody's going to see your CV or resume if you don't get past that first guardrail or that first bot now that it is, right? Because that's what everybody's using, are these like workday things where you put in all your information and something interprets it and says this is a good candidate or isn't.
Yeah.
And so the thing that can get you out of that is a person actually typing in your name and pulling out your CV and saying, okay, this is somebody we're interested in. And that for
Yeah.
me has always been a hard thing to get past, is the bots, is the keywords, is the using all the language that they've decided describes the role, often
Mhm.
when they're not even continuous improvement experts.
That's true. But I will say, and I hope, I'm curious to see if you agree with this, with how often people are moving jobs nowadays, if you
Mm-hmm.
can just make the opportunity to network even at your first job, there's a
Mm-hmm.
very good chance that that other person, somebody else there, has splintered out. And
Yeah.
if you're keeping in touch with that person genuinely, then it is another opportunity for you to reach out to at least have somebody like speak in good faith for you to connect you with somebody else. It can be
Mm-hmm.
like a friend
Mm-hmm.
of a friend, but you just need somebody that knows who you are to be able to vouch for you.
And
And then
use those
you have to
connections.
still prove yourself
Use those
afterwards.
connections. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But using those connections is something that I think a lot of us have like fear or discomfort about, kind of like putting interests on the
Mhm.
CV, right? But like we have to get
Mhm.
over that, because that's what gets you your foot in the door. That's what gets you that
Mhm.
dream job or that next job. I know for me, I
Yeah.
got, I got a job in Antarctica. I spent 3 years networking to get that job, of meeting
Mhm.
people, of talking to people, and getting somebody to introduce me to the
Mhm.
manager to send that email, so that then I was on the list when they started looking through those resumes. So it's something that's surmountable, but then when you show up, like you said, you have to bring the goods. And that
Yeah.
gets into that virtual resume. You have to bring the goods that show who you are. Are you still there? I may have got a little lost, or you may have got a little
I'm
lost.
still here. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So you have to show
No, it
up
was
with
me.
that.
I
Yeah.
still heard the ending of what you said. Yeah. You still have to
Yeah.
show up. So that's the first part that I said. I think that
Mhm.
personality tests can showcase that. We're
Yeah.
talking about networking. Now for the part that was talking about like breadth and
Mhm.
a way that you can connect things that are your interests into who you are as an employee or a worker. I'm very interested to see if radar charts or something that explains side by side your growth can start
Mm.
to showcase that. I like that radar charts, all in whatever shape that needs to be for however many points you have, it
Mhm.
shows like on a scale of a very simple scale, 0 to 5, 0 to 3, where do I rank myself in these aspects? And I
Yeah.
think that it doesn't mean like if you score yourself low in a certain area, it doesn't mean that you are like, it doesn't mean that you can't continue to grow in that area. It's just meaning that you're looking to focus to grow in that area. So it shows what you've established, and then it also shows where you're looking to grow. And I think that like being honest about a radar chart, if you had to say something about like, I don't know, relationships outside of work, health, finances, lean tools, like selling yourself, confidence, you could have all of those points around a radar chart, hit on all of those points, and then see if the job or somebody that you're talking to try to apply to, if those companies can help you kind of grow in that area. And I think that that might be something else that is very graphical. And usually when you write a resume, you have a corner that's like open in the top or on the bottom. Like it's not that you're filling every margin. So I think that a radar chart could fit very well there with like pictures that explain things, like an image of like you or a dollar sign or like a Superman symbol for like confidence or something like that. Yeah. So I think a radar chart or something, some equivalent, like
It's
kind of how.
interesting. Yeah. It's
Go ahead.
interesting that you bring that up, the radar chart, because you brought this up last time. And it got me thinking because I've been doing some mentoring in some different spaces at work and for some people at home. And it got me really thinking about how to visualize those soft skills. And that's exactly what I did is I broke those soft skills into like 7 different buckets, or not only soft skills, but lean tools, Six Sigma tools,
Yeah.
presentation skills, facilitation. So 7 buckets to see that radar, right? To see kind of where this person is at, because also it allows you to see how they've grown. And I think,
Yes.
if you included a radar chart like that, it is quite interesting because if you monitored that over time, those skills, then you could even show how you've grown in these different jobs.
Correct. And are you saying that because you can overlay different like
Yeah.
colors? Yes,
Yeah, so
that's what
this
I
is
like about it.
2005, and then you
Yeah,
see the circle got bigger and you learned a lot more about lean tools in
correct.
2010. And then in 2015, we see, oh, you learned not just lean transformation, but now your Six Sigma tools have filled in. And that
Yes.
is how the growth has been for me. It hasn't been, I learned Six Sigma first, and then I learned lean transformations, and then you learn about culture, and then,
Mhm.
like, it's not like all of it comes together at once, but each of those experiences helps you grow.
Yep. Yeah. I'm glad that you also thought about that and we both kind of keyed in on that. I really think that that can fit somewhere and it shows what I liked about a resume, the traditional one, is that it
Mhm.
condenses a long timeline into one page. I
Mhm.
still think the radar chart can do that. It can span
Mm.
multiple years. So I
Mhm.
really like that. Um, what else did I have on here? Oh, okay. I want to see what you think about this.
Mhm.
I said that resumes leave little space to explain what you bring to a particular culture. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's how you act whenever you're outside of work that influences how you are inside of work. So even though I'm in a hotel 4 days out of the main 5 day week, I still like make my bed in the hotel because
Oh,
personally,
wow.
I need to do that. I need to do that when I wake up. And I'm not talking about like crisp folds, but like I
Mhm.
have to tidy it up in a sense.
Mhm.
Or in my mind, like I can't complete that first task of the day. And I think that that goes a long way to explain, like, if I'm working at a company, those
Mhm.
little things are going to continuously get done. Or I'm going to try to find a new way to take notes to make sure that I'm capturing everybody's concerns in a way that makes
Mhm.
sense. Or I'm going to follow up on something like that. That's something that I think we would need to show, but I wouldn't write on a resume, I make my bed every day. In that, it would almost have to be like not like a testimonial, but and this is a stretch.
Mhm.
So please check me um, if you don't agree with this.
I mean, I think we're brainstorming here,
Have you
right?
heard
We're
of
throwing
the?
spaghetti on the wall.
That's true. Have you heard of the like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Uh-huh.
The yes, okay, the things that you have to have completed to be able to like think of doing any higher learning, and that's why you have to
Mhm.
get a
Like
maybe
you have to
not,
be
but that's why people
safe,
say
and
you
then
get a
you
meal
have to.
plan at college, and
Yeah, yeah.
yes, I think it would be really cool to draw that pyramid and explain what makes you feel that you've completed each of those like phases so that they know that you're well grounded. Somebody knows that you're well grounded enough to be able to focus on higher learning at work. Like, I'm so well grounded and settled in all of these things that you are getting somebody that is open to being creative and focused on this job because I don't have other things crumbling, in a sense. And it's fine if you experience something that like makes one of those pillars falter, but it'd be really good for somebody to know you're getting somebody that accomplished these things and this is how I maintain it. So for the safety aspect or for like the sense of like feeling at home or like something that says that you have control, you could put like making my bed. So it's not like it's a way to kind of like use those as guidelines or whatever that hierarchy of needs is, use those as guidelines to say, here's why I'm coming to you ready to learn and ready to contribute.
I think one of the things so I see where you're going with that. I think not everybody would necessarily I think that one's like a personal thing that people could adjust to be what it means to them, not just like the items on the hierarchy, but which tool that they use to help show that they've had this growth or how they find security. But I mean, I think that that's the big thing here is the trust and psychological security that you're exhibiting in sharing that, which as a continuous improvement professional should help you, right? Because ideally we should be in this place where we feel comfortable to experiment, to make mistakes, to be able to share. And we can only do that if we have that psychological safety, that trust embedded within the team that we're talking to. So I think, with that one, what the feeling that comes to me is that it's so personal. It's almost a deeper level than just saying, I like to take photographs or I like to travel. Now you're getting into really core pieces of who you are.
Yes. And that might come back from previous jobs that I had like in college or some of my first jobs, where once I made that personal connection with people and they knew who I was outside of work or why I had that sense of security, sometimes I felt like that unlocked a different type of working on a team. That's when somebody's willing to stay overtime to help you test an idea, to rebalance a line. Or that's when somebody else is like on their drive home, they may think of different ways to store material and then bring that up to you. It almost not in a good way, it almost in a good way allows people to think of work outside of work. And because they want to help you as the person, not just complete the task and check it off so you can get to the next one. So vulnerable, yes, you have to be a little vulnerable to show it, but it's nice that it can be personal and applied to like how you think. But I think that hierarchy of needs is so standard, but yet you can manipulate it so much that it would almost be like how the personality tests are universal as well. And it helps like categorize people into buckets. So that was my stretch. The thing that I thought about, and I was like, I want to hear what Amanda thinks about this.
That's bold. I don't know if I'm ready for that. That's bold.
We'll test that out offline. Yeah.
One of the things that I want to highlight, because we did do this, and I think you were one of the presenters, is that one of the ways that I've approached this or I've seen a gap is that employers want to see a project that you've done and they want to know details about that project. And to me, the only way that you can really share that is to actually share a project, right? To actually show that. But quite often this is proprietary, so you need additional permission. So last year, or I can't remember if it was the year before, we did the project showcase. And so we had about 8 people share their different projects. You were one of them. And to me, that like 10-minute segment that each person got is like a free CV for them to say, like, I'm going to walk through my project from start to finish and tell you all about the things that happened along the way and how I led the team to help overcome them. And I don't see ways that we enable people to do that outside of the workplace so that it can benefit them. Like you talked about, we're moving jobs so much. We need to be able to talk about those projects or highlight the cool stuff we've done outside of just being at work.
That's true. And I guess it doesn't have to all fit on a page. Like the 8 posters that you have saved and that you've made, they don't have to all fit on one page, but it would be really nice to have an elevator pitch crafted to basically walk through those, it kind of personifies a bullet point that is listed on your resume. So I like that. And you can show the pictures and the graphs and the charts that we talked about in this whole session on that poster as well. And that would be a little bit more directly linked. It's like what's inside of the bullet point. So I like that.
Oops,
more
I
posters.
see that in our
2023.
Let me go ahead and put that in the comments. I put that in the wrong place. There we go. I just went ahead and dropped a link there for anybody that wants to watch that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an opportunity that when, you know, your employer asks you or potential employer asks you about this, now you have something that's online that's approved through your previous employer that you can share about what your role is in more detail. And I tend to lean towards the CAR model with interviews or even with sharing projects kind of in 3 to 5 minutes, which is context or challenge. I'm sorry, I always do that. Challenge, action, result. Right? So you just do 1 or 2 sentences of each of those. And now you have like this great story that you can tell. And you know, I think it's really important to put those together before you meet with your the person that you're going to interview or before you present your project so that you have kind of that elevator speech ready. And whether you're talking about the virtual CV or resume, which could be something online, it could be something even interactive, right? So you talk about this CV that you'd be looking at like a one-pager that would have these different types of visual pieces there. Some of those could be linked where it goes further if the person wanted to delve further into those topics.
Yeah.
There's also the whiteboards now. Everybody uses whiteboards, so that's also a wonderful tool.
Yes. Yeah. You can bring in videos, pictures, and embed it right there on the whiteboard. Yeah, I like that. And it is nice to see if somebody can help visualize something that they've done. It means that you're able to kind of like take action on and also teach other people. I always ask people to like draw what they're saying. And sometimes that's difficult for me when somebody can't, because I may need to see it in a certain way.
Well, isn't that really the question here when we're talking? Because we talked about this, I think, being the virtual resume, but what we're really talking about is making this a visual resume, right? Because like we should be able to communicate these things as quickly as possible. And so what you've gotten at, a lot of the different tools that you've hinted at are ways that visually you can communicate things about yourself very quickly to others. You know, and if you can't do that, I mean, that's a huge part of our job. So if you're able to do that on the CV, then wow, once you get into the job, you know that that's a person that's going to be using visual aids throughout the workplace to make work easier.
Yeah. Yeah. All very interesting. The last thing that I had on here is finding a way to showcase, and I haven't found anything good for this, so I'm not coming with any ammunition here. How do you visually show what happens whenever like things go wrong? And I think that this is important. I think that you can almost shoot yourself in the foot to say, when things go wrong, I'm the person that stays there until the lights shut off. Like sometimes you might want to tease this in a little bit. You might want to show like the strategy around what happens and how you think whenever things go wrong. So like as soon as something came in that was poor quality, like I'm the person that taught Fishbone and 5 Whys analysis to everybody. And like I set up a meeting. Or were you the person that like did an every article inspection and like found all the bad product and quantified it? Like what does your mind go to naturally whenever something is in like red alert? Because I think finding the right blend of people on a team, I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I do think that when I said you can shoot yourself in the foot, if you say that you do everything, that's a lot of stuff for one person to do whenever everything is going wrong. You almost need people that can handle a certain aspect of that problem. So it'd be really nice to know, like, in a crisis, who am I putting on the field and in what positions? It's like the special teams in a football team. Like
Yeah.
whenever bad quality comes in, Amanda's going to set up the fishbone diagram in this meeting room, and she's going to set the times. Dom's going to rip stuff off of the truck, look and see what's wrong, and he's going to tag this and physically move things to these areas. Then we can meet back up and all work together. But it's nice to know like who wears what hat, so that whenever it does inevitably happen, it's not everybody wants to do one thing, because that's where they feel comfortable. So
Yeah.
if there's a way that you've seen that, or like a badge of honor that somebody wears, or like it's like showing your scars in a sense. And I wouldn't draw like a human body and like I wouldn't draw like a stick figure and say like, here's how I react to these.
Yeah.
But that's what I kind of want to talk about too.
Well, it's interesting kind of, what comes to mind, because I am a very visual person, and even like chatting right now, I'm kind of drawing like, so this is the person with the little e-colors around them. This is their name. And then, we've got the radar chart and the hierarchy of controls, because as you're talking, it's kind of all coming together in my mind. But then, as you said that piece, I was kind of thinking of like something like this, where it's almost like those questions that we get asked most frequently. How do you, tell me about a time where things didn't go well? Tell me about a time that,
let's start there.
that I mean, those are the questions they're going to ask. And so when you say that, it's almost like I'm thinking you could have almost little call outs here that says when things go bad. And then you could list maybe things about yourself that you already have a story prepared, because maybe use that car model ahead of time. So you've already got your challenge, action, and result ready for those stories that you've listed there. But you can almost have like little taglines there that just kind of highlighted things that you wanted to direct in the conversation, right? Because this is also a way that you can take control of the conversation a bit when you hit those questions that everybody asks on every interview, right? They're like, no matter what type of interviewing technique you use, there's always the same questions, right?
Yes.
And so it almost gives you the chance to kind of answer those things ahead of time for the employers, and have them kind of think more deeply, which means you get better questions.
Yes. And the reason I thought of that and even wanted to bring it up is because when I look at the bullet points that I would write on a resume, I'm always like, oh, I remember this crazy thing happened, and that's what spurred this project. Nobody wakes up and they're like, everything's perfect. Well, some people might. Everything's perfect. Let's start this project, and it's not going to have any issues. And it started genuinely because we just wanted to do it. Like, something is on fire, and you need to fix it with Kaizen, problem solving, root cause analysis, something. Like, something needs to happen in response to some sort of stimulus, or, I don't know, reaction or something like that. So,
and you could have that thumbnail below it.
Yes. Like, right? This is what caused it. And this is like where I was in the moment of all the craziness.
Yeah. Then, craziest moment at work. Yes. That could be the tagline. Yes. And then people, when you have the right tagline that people want to click on, then they're like, oh, what crazy thing happened to him at work? Oh, okay. Well, that's, he's got the fishbone there. Okay. I want to know more about that.
Yes. And maybe there are things that you did in that modified what the pieces of a fishbone are. Like, maybe you took a small like sidestep, and that's where you're able to really explain it. They see how many employees you were working with, how you were creative, how you still got to solving the root cause of the issue. And it embodies such a better story. And I guess all of this together turns a transactional piece of paper that is the traditional resume into you putting your creative twist on truly telling a story about who you are, without somebody looking you up on social media and trying to gather it from there. And that's why I think that this is like such a continuous opportunity to showcase who you are professionally. Adding things like this, you can't just give it to somebody and they're like, oh, there's the hierarchy of needs triangle. Like, I know exactly what that means. You're still going to have to explain it. But I think listing it in that visual way enables you to start being better at telling stories. And that might be the thing that helps you sell yourself a little bit better. So yeah, it needs to fit on one page, but you still have to put the sweat equity in to convey it in a sense.
Well, and I'm very passionate. Like, when we do Six Sigma projects that are very detailed, that have a lot of data in them, the people looking at it, the managers looking at it, they don't want to see these graphs that go into great detail that tell you the confidence levels. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time that's not what they want to see. They want to see something quick and before and after, and now you saved $2 million. Great. That's all
Yeah.
that they want to see, right? But you should always have that appendix there so that when they ask those deeper questions, because there's always one person that's going to be like, I'm going to get you, right? And then you're like, oh, I have that here. You go to appendix, slide 87. Here's all the information you need. If you want the Excel, I'll send it to you. Right. And so as you say that, I kind of think about like we have this one pager that's super visual. But then having that back of our resume where we have that detailed, maybe 5-pager or LinkedIn, with hyperlinks and everything today, you could easily have that hyperlink to a certain section of your resume that if they wanted to know more, they could click on it and they could see like your very resume speak about, I led this project and it did this.
Yes.
So it's a nice way to really quickly convey that information. Like we said, that visuality, that language of visual, being able to speak visually without saying a word, right? Or communicate visually without having to say a word. So yeah, I think it's really interesting as we kind of delve into that, because it's definitely got me thinking about like exactly what that looks like. And I'm keen for us to maybe look at that further or make our own and see if we can
make a mural about it or something. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to make our own now, I think, so that we can see what would this look like in reality, because reality is always a little bit different than brainstorming. But yeah, I'd be keen to see kind of what these things look like all together.
Yeah. And a way, and this is me thinking of 5S, you need the sustain piece. So something, and I'm not into like super buff guy working out things, but like what I really like about the, let's say, CrossFit community or something, there are like continuous competitions for anybody at every level of like getting into it for you to continuously compete and then gauge yourself. There's like a universal scoreboard based on whatever category you fall into for you to see where you fall and track your personal progress amongst everybody else. So these poster sessions, like it almost, I think that a traditional resume has been enabled by obtaining a job and metric by metric beating out somebody else, or hashtag by hashtag putting the right keywords in there to beat somebody else to be seen. I feel like this would die. And it would only be able to be sustained if there was something else that enabled you to continue to update it, enabled you to continue to find ways to be creative, like contests that are bigger than the poster presentation. Like it would have to be something that's as nerdy as you could imagine, but like, oh, I presented this project that I did that I'm going to add to my virtual resume. And it's not for likes, it's for personal progress and growth in a way that it doesn't have to be something that's standardized, but like you're just, I don't know yet. It doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. And I think,
GBT.
Yeah, when we talk about too, because we kind of started off saying, one of the things that's changing is that people are switching jobs. I mean, this is a very millennial thing, right? Is that we're not staying in our jobs as long. I'm sure as Gen Z and others start to come in, this is a trend that's not going to go away. So it makes it more important that we can summarize those experiences and that we can communicate them effectively, and that we have a way to reach out to people or to market ourselves that goes beyond me looking something up on Indeed or whatever, right? I was going to say Monster, but I think we're decades past that maybe now. I don't know if Monster's still out there.
I don't think so.
But on Indeed, right, or LinkedIn. But like, having that so that people are reaching out to you, especially if you're in a contract situation, versus you having to go out and seek over and over. And this is really like the benefit of having something that's out there, public, something that's updated, as you indicated, and ways for people to get connected with you, is that really helps work come to you so that you're not having to kind of chase after work all the time.
Yeah. And I already think that things like that exist now. You hear about these, like, I don't know what to call them. There's these things like mastermind groups or Vistage groups, or like these professional networking groups that like help you meet people if you're trying to accomplish a need, like accomplish the next step in whatever you're trying to do. I don't think that it'd be that far off if we modeled it off of something like that, where it's not pay to play, but like there are tiers of how you can like get into it. There'd be like a college version, a high school version, a first 5 years into your career version, or like if you hit this corporate ladder staircase and like you're breaching into other areas, then you can jump into another tier as well. So I think that we'll talk more about it. It's not just an hour-long discussion, but it's a very exciting thing to think about how we're going to showcase and sell ourselves as we move further into the future.
Yeah, and I think, there's pieces in that too that we didn't cover, we didn't talk about, which is, we kind of mentioned bias or having these bots or AI or people seeking out or submitting CVs and resumes to see if there's any of that bias there. But we didn't really talk about some of those things that we do to sabotage ourselves, sometimes as women or as people of color, or like the different things, the different communities maybe don't realize that when they put their CV or resume out there and they do these things, it's something that puts it at the bottom or makes it not as desirable, or we're not applying for the things that really push us. And, that's a topic that we didn't even touch on that really, for me, once I learned some of those things that I was doing, really changed the way that I see or approach this topic, how I write my CV, how I put myself out there. I also just want to call out, one of the questions in the Facebook group that I've been getting quite a bit from people is, how do I get started? Where do I get started in continuous improvement? So I was thinking maybe when we meet again in 2 weeks, can that be our topic? How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
how to
fine.
get started and I'm really going to say like how to get started. Like everybody wants a green belt. Right. So I think, a piece of that's going to be talking about this green belt certification thing and how important that is or how not important that is. And, when we talk about how to get started, I'd also like to be real specific about like, this is the site you should go to, or this is what you should do, right? This is what I get asked a lot. So, I mean, I have some go-tos, but I'm curious as well what your go-tos will be when we chat again.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have a creative side to that will still be deliberate, not it depends, but I'll have something written down
It
for
does,
that.
though. It depends
It
so
does.
much on so many factors, but
At least while we're talking about it, I can pick a destination so that I don't have to say it depends. Yeah.
And we can see if we have similar destinations we send people to, because I send people pretty consistently to the same places. And so, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But this was awesome, Dominic, talking more about, these CVs and resumes. And I think we have to change the title from the virtual resume to the visual resume, because that's really what we ended up talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great talking to you too. I'll see you in a bit.
All right. See you in 2 weeks.